This is the CNC Geekcast, the podcast where two guys with speech impediments talk about movies. I'm Joseph Collins.
Now Paul Combs.
And on today's episode, we'll be talking about Quiet Place. We're going to be talking about the characters, the plot, what makes this movie so good and why it's so popular, and much more. So stay tuned.
Okay, we're not going to do that the whole episode. We thought it'd be fun, since the movie is entitled A Quiet Place, to do something different with our intro.
And I think I'm being watched by some monsters, even though that watch would not be a proper term, would it?
No, had they heard us, it would be too late at this point.
Yeah, but we're going to be talking about The Quiet Place.
Yeah, and before we get into the movie, I know it's probably still in theaters in some places, and I know it hasn't been released on DVD yet, so if you haven't seen it, get out there and watch it.
Yes, because it's so good. But now, Paul, why is this movie good?
Well, I thought it did a fantastic job just with the sound design.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a very quiet theater, and it was fantastic because I was sitting there. It made me hyper aware of even like everything in the theater. I heard the people mentioning the popcorn, and I was hyper aware of all the sounds in the movie as well. I thought that was really cool because few movies have been able to immerse me into the sound like that one has.
Yeah, I also think that it did do a very good job of it. But the opening scene I thought, just brilliant. And there was one character where they actually hired an actress who was actually deaf. And one of the characters in the movie was deaf. And the director, who is the Jim from The Office, was his name?
His name is John Krasinski, I think.
Yeah, and also his wife played in this one, too.
Yeah, Emily Blunt.
Yeah, they're married. And so he specifically went out and sought a deaf girl and asked her how it would be like and got feedback from her. And the thing I really like about this film and how creative this is, and he told the story about how the idea was actually the actors and the mom of the deaf girl said, when you switch to her, why don't you have the sound just nothing? And that did a really good job of establishing the stakes for her as a character.
It did. It showed how she heard the world differently. Because in this movie, in this world, the way you hear it is everything. Mm-hmm. Because you have to be aware of the noise you're making, aware of how to avoid it, how to be as careful as possible. Which I enjoyed about the opening scene. Because just thinking about it, from the first seconds, it made it clear that the young boy, Bo, I think his name was, wasn't cut out to survive in this world. Like, I hate to say that about such a young boy, and the movie does too, but he wasn't careful. He wasn't aware of the stakes, and he paid the ultimate price.
Yeah, that is true, even though that the parents did take almost every single proper precaution, and even they, toward the end of the film, blamed themselves that they didn't take proper precautions. And unfortunately, it's something that in real life, and there's another thing I like about this film, is that it did a really good job of showing the burden that parents have when it comes to taking care of a child.
Yeah, I agree with you on that too. I'm not a parent, but I thought it was interesting the way the movie portrayed the responsibilities of parenting.
Yeah, and especially just the relationship between how children may not really understand parents' decisions about specific things, but parents do make decisions to protect their child. And then one of the main reasons of parenting is to raise your child so they can themselves be an independent adult. But in this situation, we have monsters out there who can heal you by just dropping a loud noise or comes chasing after you. Yeah, it really does up the stakes for this film. And I think that, you can just see the love the parents have and how much they're trying to live in this world that is, and it's not dystopia, but I don't
know if dystopia would be the right word, but kind of post-apocalyptic, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So that, again, that's unclear, because I'm not sure how many families survived, and this was obviously a very rural location, so I'm not sure about what happened to the larger metropolitan areas.
And how these beasts came to be about. I mean, it'd be nice if they kind of had a explanation or something down, not like another movie, but kind of like a side thing in a book or something.
Actually, I disagree.
Really?
I do. Like, for example, the original Alien from 1979 is the perfect movie. Mm-hmm. And as they've tried to add more into the mythos, they've kind of dulled the shine of the original movie.
Yeah, because you had that mystery of where the aliens came from.
Yeah, because I wasn't too worried about it the first time I watched Alien. I didn't really care. I just knew the stakes. I knew at that moment. Everything else was tertiary. Yeah. And the same in this movie. Again, I didn't really care about where the monsters came from. John Krasinski did reveal that they were extraterrestrial life that came to Earth.
Okay.
He didn't reveal how, but I did see an interview with him about that. But again, frankly, I didn't care. When watching that opening scene, seeing the monster, that wasn't my concern. I was just so focused on the family. The same as in The Alien, I'm going to keep making that comparison. I was so focused on Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah, and then another thing that makes that opening scene so great is, like you said, the baby couldn't survive really without the parents, but the parents did try to take the proper precautions. But in the opening scene, the boy did find, they were like shopping around, getting supplies, and they were in a convenience store, and the boys found a toy. And there was nothing wrong with the boy wanting a toy. And another thing I like about this movie is when they communicated, they used sign language.
Well, that makes perfect sense. First off, it makes sense that they would have already known sign language. That wasn't a concern since their daughter was deaf. But I think the opening scene was a masterclass in showing and not telling. Because watching it, there's all these little details that kind of reveal what's going on in the world before you're ever told what's going on in the world. Like, think about it. For example, when they come up to the grocery store, the doors are already open. They're propped open. And then you see, like, the chip aisle is completely empty. You see the sand going into town to make it where they make as little sound as possible while walking. Before anything is revealed about the movie, the audience is already aware that sound is to be avoided.
It's the enemy in this.
Yeah.
It's the I don't want to say that it is the official enemy of the film, because the monsters are. But yeah, making a sound is, you understand the stakes of it. And I do like how the father in this film is a father and someone who is, takes a high responsibility and a very important responsibility of making sure that he is, strict with his children, but at the same time loving when he has to be. Because there's a scene where one of the sons was driving in a car, and I was just dreaming about, and the father just stood out there, just looked at him, saying, with his look, say we have to go. But then he patted his son on the shoulder, showing, I understand what you want, but unfortunately we can't have it, but just hang in there, type of thing. So I do appreciate that type of father figure in this movie.
I appreciated John Krasinski as well. It was interesting to see him in this role because I'm only familiar with him from Jim from The Office, as I imagine most people are familiar with him. And just truthfully, he looks a lot better with a beard.
Yeah, the long, bushy beard.
The same with Collins over here.
Oh,
Collins has grew a beard. You can't see it because you're listening to us. But he looks fantastic with a beard.
Why, thank you.
He's like John Krasinski.
I am. I'd have to grow it out a bit longer. But like you said, the masterclass film, and the reason why, and it goes back to showing and not telling, because they didn't say any dialogue, and that's very important because you look at, I'm bringing up Star Wars again. There's a scene in Star Wars where they just escaped the Death Star, and Han Solo said to Princess Leia, "I'm not aiming for your revolution. I'm in it for me and the money." So that's George Lucas trying to convey to the audience, he's Han Solo. He's in it for himself, but we already know this through previous actions. So that's a perfect example of, like you said, telling and not showing. Even though that it's not a hard, fast rule, though sometimes you can go through dialogue and explain it through dialogue. But this is a perfect example of what Paul's talking about. Well, like he said, you see everything and you don't need a single word to explain it. But I do love this following scene where they were on the bridge and the boy wanted a play with the
rocket ship
with the shuttle, and of course, the father was like, "No, it's too loud. It will make noise. We don't want that." And he put it away, and of course went back to the idea to his son, "I know you want this, but you can't have it." But the girl decided to break the rules and give the rocket ship to the son anyway. And I love that moment where the boy takes the thing out, and suddenly that is such a brilliant moment in screenplay writing when the son unfortunately died. Because what that did was it showed the audience nobody is safe. If we're willing to kill a 5-year-old in this story, we're willing to kill anybody. And that really did a great job of upping up the tension. Not only that, but the fact that the girl was deaf, it also upped the tension for her because she can't hear anything. And that's terrible if a monster is creeping up behind you.
That is a fantastic point because I did kind of wonder what was going to happen in the movie. Many times I did think a character was going to die in this film. Like later in the movie when the young girl wanders off alone, I really didn't know what was going to happen. I did think the movie did a good job conveying that possibility because in so many films, especially PG-13 films, the children are basically untouchable.
Yeah. And not only that, but the part where she fell asleep in the field, you think to yourself, well, that's just a normal thing that some people do. But when you're deaf and you can't hear yourself making sound, and you're sitting there sleeping, you don't know what your body's doing, if you're snoring, if what happens. And so it really does a really good job of basically taking the mundane stuff and basically feeling how all this normal stuff they can't do anymore because of the amount of sound that is created.
Yeah. I did think it was really clever how the movie devoted so much time to all the precautions they had made at the house. Like all the rules they had made, that of things that you really don't even think about. For example, when they're playing Monopoly, which I do hate.
Yeah, I hate that too, because I'm just a big board game fan. I'm like, you have an entire genre of board games out there. You could have picked any game, but it had to be Monopoly.
Well, that's the most obvious, though.
I'm recognized, I get it.
Show and not telling. Like, if there was Settlers of Catan, something most people aren't going to be familiar with that.
It's true, but at the same time, it's like, and you may ask the question, well, how are you supposed to use dice? You get those fuzzy pink dice, and you can still use them to roll. There, your problem solved.
Collins.
Right? No? Okay.
Collins, I think you're focusing too much on the completely unnecessary details.
Yeah, I know, but still, it's like I said, I'm a board game fan. It's
like I did think it was really clever. Like, first off, the light system, like the way they had it colored for the red being in danger, because again, that doesn't make any sound. It was really clever to see the fact that all the pieces on the Monopoly board were cotton balls.
Yeah,
it was clever to see the soundproofing they did throughout the house to kind of.
And not only that, but when they walked into the house, they mapped out the creaks that the boards made, and so they had footprints showing them where to stand so you don't make a sound in the floor.
I actually didn't notice that.
Yeah, again, really clever. The detail that the movie makes went through, I really do enjoy. I also enjoy the scene where the father took his son to the creek to go fishing, and the daughter wanted to go, but the father didn't let her because, of course, you don't know what's going to happen. At that point, I love how they could talk normally, because the sound of the water was so loud that it just muffled the sound. It all kind of blended in. And there was one point where the father took his son to a waterfall, and they screamed in the waterfall, and the monsters couldn't hear anything. And I thought it was a very beautiful moment, just so the father let the son speak normal. And I also thought it was a great way to implement dialogue into the film and make it natural.
Yes. What did you think of Emily Blunt's character? Which I actually found interesting. I just learned that they were actually married while doing research for this episode. I didn't know that. So it was kind of cool.
I mean, I liked her character. Even though she was pregnant in the film, the point where she was giving birth, but she stepped on that nail, the scene where she was about to give birth. I mean, I understand that some people may have some complaints about how it may suspend their sense of disbelief. But actually,
it didn't make me suspend my sense of disbelief. What bothered me about the nail scene was the fact that the nail wasn't really necessary. The audience already understood the danger from the pregnancy. Okay. They already understood the danger there. Mm-hmm. So the nail just added more on top of that, and it just was completely unnecessary. Like, had you just had the dread of the pregnancy there, it would have been enough to still make for that fantastic moment with the firework.
Yeah, it was a really good moment for her character because she was giving birth, she stepped on a nail, which caused most people to scream, so she has to sit there, and a monster suddenly gets into the house where they live. And suddenly, she cannot make a sound when it comes to that, laying out that pain for the nail, and she cannot give out a sound when giving into labor. And because that is a very painful experience, and at no point in time can she let out that sound. So she's over here in complete pain.
I thought it was fantastic because it showed the strength of will of the character.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. I mean, it's like she was giving birth, but she did out Survivor, and I thought that it was also a tense scene. Even more tense scene.
It was a fantastically tense scene because, as you say, it isn't. I imagine. I don't know.
I don't know either.
I am a guy, but I understand that that's a very intense, a very painful experience. Mm-hmm. So the idea of not being able to scream or let out in pain is remarkable. And we all know that the scream is coming at some point, just because there's no way she can hold it in the whole time. Mm-hmm. So seeing John Krasinski's character race to the fireworks and kind of the fact that he had that all set up and ready to go
in case of emergency, and I just love that moment when they walked over the hill and saw that the red light. He just suddenly hustled in, and I don't know what made him. I don't remember exactly, but I guess he heard the monsters were in the room, and I love that part. Well, yeah, once the fireworks went off, the wife let out a scream, and that scene where he was running into the house with a shotgun. Yeah, I agree, that was fantastic.
You know, Actually, the scene, John Krasinski did say he got inspiration from the scene, which I learned doing research for this movie. But the scene you're talking about in the movie was very reminiscent of the scene in Jurassic Park.
Oh, the raptor scene?
With the velociraptors?
In the kitchen?
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I was thinking of that very thing when I was watching the film.
I was too. So to hear that he actually got inspiration from Jurassic Park was cool. And it also validated me a bit.
Oh, why is that?
I was like, hey, because while watching it, I was like you, I was thinking about that. Mm-hmm. So the fact that I was kind of right on the money.
Yeah, me too, yeah.
Made me feel good.
Oh, yeah, it's a pat on the back.
Yeah, I'm patting myself on the back.
Okay, yeah. But another scene I liked about, I didn't say I liked, but I understand, is a scene where the father and the son was walking back to the house and they come across the elderly man who just lost his wife and who let out that scream. I
thought it tied well into the theme of family, because there is very much the theme of this movie is taking responsibility for the family. What will you do to protect them and everything? And well, at that point, that man had lost his family. He was alone. It was in the movie's world, family is everything. So it was over for the character. It worked. It was a heartbreaking moment. It was a scary moment, and it worked.
Yeah. I also like the scene where after they give birth, and this movie does a really good job of covering as much bases as it can, because once they give birth, they were expecting the child, and they set up a crib that was soundproof once the baby was born, because they knew that the baby was going to let out
Well, if they soundproofed the crib, why didn't they just soundproof the whole basement?
Well, I think they did soundproof the whole basement, but they was taking extra precaution. I'm assuming they soundproofed the basement because...
I don't know.
Maybe it wasn't soundproof, but it was hidden in a way that it probably wasn't an easy access for any monsters to get to. But at the same time, they were taking extra precautions. I do appreciate the film going into that detail with it.
Yeah, all the little details are what made this film the quality it is. I was impressed by John Krasinski's directing, because this is his first time at the helm of a movie with this budget. I think he may have directed a couple of smaller things, but it's the first time he's had the budget or the marketing budget to really play with and really go wild.
Yeah, and I do love the final climax of the scene where the children are in danger, and he basically sacrificed himself to protect his children. And this goes back to the point I was making with the daughter. The older daughter felt like she wasn't being treated like the older daughter because she was deaf. And as I mentioned, the entire time in the film, the father was trying to build a hearing aid that helps the daughter. But the daughter didn't really understand. And there was this moment where the father wasn't successful at it. And the daughter didn't feel like the father loved her because of the way that she felt like she was being treated. And so the final thing that the father had said, he signed language to her, "I love you." And then after that scene, after the father sacrificed himself and the monster killed the father, the scene where they got into the basement where the hearing aids were, the scene where she walked over all of those hearing aids and saw how much effort and how much nights the father put into finding a solution, for me was a very powerful moment.
Well, it was powerful because it tied again into the theme of responsibility and stuff, that parents take up on these responsibilities that children may not be aware of or they may not understand, and then you don't really understand them to a later time when you gain perspective.
Yeah,
it tied well into that. It was a visual representation of that film.
I also liked it because it showed that even though that the father did not understand what it meant to be deaf, he still, as parents, carry a big piece of that burden with them, and he would do anything to help his daughter heal again. And he worked hard to do that. He even read books on the matter. He found books, and he wasn't an expert on the anatomy of the ear and how the ear works. He got anatomy books to help him figure out how the ear works, how sound travels, how he take in information, and he was putting effort and time into it. And it's like, well, I don't know how it feels to be deaf, but I will surely help my child become better. And that's something that every single loving parent really wants for their child. It's the best. And you can see that in the film, and how much parents hate the idea that their child is going through such a terrible thing and they can't really do much about it, and they try. And I love that scene for it. But what did you think of the climax of the film?
Are you talking about the end with the shotgun?
Yeah, the end.
I hated that.
Okay, why?
It got a little too action movie-ish for me.
Did you? I did.
It did. Like, it killed my suspension of disbelief. My suspension of disbelief was bothered a couple times in this film, actually, but
Okay.
this one was the most, because, first off, we see that box of shotgun shells. Mm-hmm. There's 15 shells, right?
Okay.
And you see, like, 5 monsters coming through. Most shotguns can only hold, like, 5 shells, right? You see all those monsters?
5 to 8, yeah.
Yeah. The family's going to die at that point. Like,
Well, I don't know about that because the movie did show that once the daughter found the weakness to the monster was the oversensitive sound, or I don't know what this frequency, the like jacked up frequency, the monster did freeze in place.
it did.
I mean,
but again, that's assuming they don't miss. That's assuming that.
yeah, but you do have a tactical advantage though, where you can run up to the monster in close range and pull the trigger.
You do have a tactical advantage, but you can. The thing with the shotgun is you can still only take out one at a time.
Yes, but at the same time, if you get close enough and you cause enough damage, you could cause enough damage in one shot with the shotgun, because the way that the beads spread,
the pellets.
yeah, the pellet and the amount. So I think that it is possible.
And then the fact that, first off, we saw the newspaper clippings earlier in the movie, like the New York Post itself had said it's sound. So how had no one figured that out before them?
I don't think that was the case, because if you look at I Am Legend, the movie, you see that human beings had a campsite set up already. Same thing with 28 Days Later. They had a campsite, but that doesn't mean that news got out to all the people on the outside of that campsite or out in the wilderness, as you saw. So that news couldn't travel that far.
So your thought is that the metropolitan areas have survived better than the rural areas?
Well, and for me, it's like the movie doesn't say at any point in time that this information is only something that was only discovered by this family. And so I'm assuming that, the Metropolitans figured this stuff out. The news just didn't get out to that point, because it's like you're going out there, you're trying to get information out to people you may not know exist. The resources could have been better used somewhere else, or probably that's what the thinking is for most soldiers and most setups in that situation.
And I'm not sure how I feel about this movie getting a sequel.
Oh, is already getting a sequel?
Yes, it's actually been announced.
What? Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh,
You're
okay.
behind, Joseph.
Oh, so is it called A Quieter Place?
If it is, I'm totally going to punch you in the face. Like, that's going to happen.
Oh, Quiet Places? Just add plural to everything. I mean, that's what they do with the aliens.
I hate you. Because I could actually totally see that happening.
Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money.
Yeah. Because that's kind of what this feels like to me. This was such a self-contained story. Mm-hmm. It had the theme of family. If you add more, it's going to be like Alien and Aliens. Like, where it has to change dramatically to really work. Like, it worked with Alien and Aliens. I know that I'm making that comparison again. But I think that's kind of a flash in the pan. That it shouldn't have worked. It was a miracle that everything worked.
Well, it is, and you didn't expect it to be on this level, and it is considered to be one of the better horror films of recent memory. And if it is a horror film, and many people debate that. Now, I don't know how many. I think the ratio is more in the horror film camp than thriller camp.
Well, horror and thriller are always closely linked too, because horror, in my mind, a lot of times horrors have more of the traditional monsters.
Yeah,
like even Halloween with Mike Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jason. Yeah. That's what I think of when I think of horror.
When I think of horror, I think of more of a psychological...
That's more thriller to me.
Manipulation. Well, it is more thriller, but what I mean by that is like you think of the American Horror Show, where you have those type of things where it's clearly that someone's about to die and die in a gruesome way, and you see that gruesome death, and you see that monster or that clown, Pennywise.
I think that threads the line. I think Pennywise is very much horror, because I think a lot of it comes down to the monster. Okay. Whereas, like, a monster film will try to humanize the monster, whereas, like, Halloween, he's just a force of nature.
Well, that's what I mean is in the sense that in the scene, like, a clown could sit there with a big smile on his face, like in American Horror Show, and you don't know what that clown's thinking, and the clown's acting all nice and kind and stuff, only to get and gobble you up, and you see this gruesome scene of someone being gobbled up. I think that most people associate that with horror than just a psychological thing. I think this movie, for me, I didn't really get a sense of horror, but I could be mistaken.
I would have liked kind of a better creature design in this movie.
You think so? I mean, to be fair, I don't think it was necessary to have a good...
I don't know. I guess I'm just drawn to, like, the monsters. Like the Xenomorph, for example.
Yeah, that is a good sign.
It's an iconic monster.
Yeah.
I would have liked something... Even the Netflix's movie The Ritual that came out recently, it has a fantastic monster design.
Okay.
And I just think this movie was lacking in that department. Like, I don't think this is a horror movie classic. I've seen people say that.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's a classic, but I definitely think if it is a horror film, it is definitely deserves to be considered one of the best.
I think it's one of the best of the past few years.
Yeah, well, I
don't want to say one of the best of all.
Well, to be fair, that list is not that much because there's a lot of bad horror films. There are more bad horror films because they keep on pumping those things out because it's so cheap to make compared to good. But from that standpoint, it definitely is better than all the other horror films. That when you start pumping those things out, it's like some of those horror films are going to be good. So
good, not great.
No, it's not great. I don't think it's a classic. I don't think it's like one of the great. Like I said, Alien or maybe Halloween, but it definitely deserves to be considered to be one of the better.
Okay.
In my opinion. Yeah. But also, I mean, is there anything else you didn't like about the film? Or,
it made sense from a character perspective, but why would you have a baby in that scenario?
And they may not have birth control or condoms.
I don't know. Like, I don't, but just thinking about it, like, I just, on the surface, that's just a very bad idea. Like, I understand the way the movie dealt with the psychological aspects of that. Mm-hmm. There's even the conversation they have. They basically had the child as a replacement.
Okay.
Like, which does make sense because, unfortunately, if a parent does lose a child, a lot of times they will either split up or have another baby to fill the hole. So, I mean, it made sense from a character perspective. It's just thinking about the universe and thinking about the world itself.
Mm-hmm. At the same time, the movie did show that they tried to at least have a normal life in the situation that they were in. So having a baby is, having a normal life for a lot of people. And though I do understand where you're coming from, I mean, they did take the proper precautions to the best of their abilities. I mean, they did, I guess they figured that if you take the proper precautions when it happens, this is the steps, because when they made the crib to put the baby, they did have oxygen too to give the baby. So,
and I just realized the very obvious symbolism there. No, I'm sorry, I just realized what I was saying. I was like, is it really a good idea to bring the baby into that ward? And then thinking about people saying, is it a good idea to bring the baby into the ward now?
No. You mean like today?
Yes, I've heard people say that too. So
okay, that can be. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. I was like, wait, movie, I see what you did there.
I mean, it's an interesting comparison, like you said. It's like, do you bring a child into the world even if you know the child could suffer, the child could die? I mean, what? I just
think by the very nature of a baby, the child is, bringing the baby into is a death sentence to the kid. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no way a toddler or a 2 or 3-year-old would understand the stakes, understand everything required. They're older than kindergarten most of the time before they're even introduced to the concept of death.
But this goes back to the conversation that the mother and the husband had with one another about what good are we if you can't protect our children? And they went back and talked about how at the beginning of the film, the wife said, I could have carried the child myself. I could have done that instead of letting him walk on his own. So you can always go there and second guess yourself in all those circumstances.
That scene actually did bother me.
It did? Why?
Because I don't know, it may just because of the fact that I've watched so many movies. Mm-hmm. But after that scene, I was actually watching the movie with my fiancée Amanda. After that scene, I actually stood over and whispered to her. I was like, John Krasinski's going to die in the next scene.
Yeah.
And of course it actually happened, because it's just, I don't know, this movie did a very good job with like trying to avoid some of the more horror movie tropes, trying to subvert expectations, and then it did that, like the most predictable slog possible.
Yeah, but here's my counter argument to that. Unlike a lot of horror tropes, a lot of the tropes happen, but they're empty. Mm-hmm. His sacrifice wasn't an empty one. And even though that it was a trope, it was a meaningful one. And so they did give you something out of it.
I'm not disagreeing with the meaningfulness of it, because it still was a meaningful moment. Mm-hmm. It's just the fact that the movie telegraphed it so hard.
Well, either the movie telegraphed it, or we just got used to the idea that, hey, it's going to happen. Even if they didn't telegraph it, I still think you would have been like, okay, he's going to die in the next scene anyway. So it just happens to be that. I agree with what you're saying, but I myself didn't like the idea that he died. But I appreciate his sacrifice because it showed how much he loved his children, to the point where, I'm willing to give my life for my children. So,
will you watch the sequel in theaters?
Yeah, I probably would watch the sequel in theaters. I didn't know there was a sequel, and I don't think it needs to be a sequel. But yeah, I'll watch it if
Unfortunately, this movie is so much about the experience. Mm-hmm. One of the things that bothers me about that, though, is how quickly the experience can be ruined for others.
Yeah,
like if you go to the theater, be respectful to others, just please. This is my PSA to you. Mm-hmm. This is my PSA to our audience. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, I mean, when now in public, just be considerate to the people around you.
So, multiple groups of my friends, when they went to see this movie does require silence. It does kind of require audience participation. If the audience isn't participating, if the audience isn't sold, you're going to ruin the experience for others. Like, you're going to make tertiary sounds. The people are going to hear you drink drinks, eat popcorn, whatever. But don't be talking to your friends. Don't be doing that kind of things in the movie theater.
Yeah. Well, speaking of such, this movie did do something. Because I got so attached to the characters, every time there was a monster on the screen, I just kept on, like, silently cussing under my mouth. And I was, like, hitting my fist when the monster was about to, sneaking up on one of the main characters. I'm just like, when that movie did that for me, and a lot of horror movies don't do that. I watched some horror movies last year. A lot of it didn't do that. When a movie does that to me, you had me sold at that point. It's like, if you can get me attached to the characters, you did a very good job for me. But yeah, when it comes back to the movie theaters, the movie theater is not your personal TV room. It's not. It's a place where we all go to watch a movie. So, be respectful. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think that's about it for this episode.
Yeah, we talked about a lot, haven't we? I mean, we really did enjoy this film.
We overall. Did. Overall, we enjoyed it. I had some problems with it.
But not enough to take you away from the film.
Not enough to take me from the film. I think I say that a lot.
Yeah, you do. I can't think of the last bad film that
Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets.
That one right there. It's like that movie. But tell the audience what's on store for them next week.
Why should we be talking about a Western again? As you know, I, Paul, am a huge fan of Westerns.
No.
There's something about the genre that I've always been drawn to.
It's the hats.
It's definitely the hats.
And the boots.
I'm not going to lie. It's the... Shut up, Collins. Anyway, we're going to be talking about Hostels. It's a recent movie starring Christian Bale. Fantastic actor. It's gotten to the point where I will watch him in pretty much anything.
Me too.
I was frankly blown away by the performance in this film. I had a friend recommend it, and I went to it going in not knowing much about it. And the film has stuck with me, and I kind of want to talk about that.
I do too. I saw it, and I enjoyed every moment. There was like probably one thing I didn't like about it, but we will talk about that next week. But in the meantime, I'm Joseph Collins.
I'm Paul Coombs.
And you've been listening to the CNC Geekcast.